A couple weeks ago, my family and I, we went skiing in Oregon, and I'm with my kids on the mountain, and I had that moment of peace. I don't always think peace is something you just have all of the time. I don't think any feeling or state of reality is something that's just constant. We move and we ebb and we flow as human beings, but sometimes that little moment of perfection, that little moment of peace, you just know, I just tasted of that thing. And we're on the mountain, each of my kids are being my kids, and there's like no one else on this run at this point, right? And they're like three little ducklings, and I'm just sitting and I'm letting them all go, and they're all like kind of getting their confidence as they're skiing. And my oldest is being the oldest, and he's shooting out ahead and cruising by and just making sure that everyone knows that he is number one. And my number two is following behind him, trying to catch up, and the entire way down the mountain, he is smacking his butt like he's riding a horse because he is number two. And then my third, she's overly confident but believes that she can do anything that her brothers can do, and she is just taking her little pizza wedge and getting as fast as she can to get there to them, and she falls a couple times and she get right back up. She's like, "That's okay, I'm okay," and would just keep going down the mountain. I just sat there from above watching the whole thing, and then there was peace, and I could just hear the wind quietly going through my helmet, and I could see snow calmly coming down. And part of me is just a mystic. I'm a closet charismatic, to be honest. And there's these deep things that are rooted inside of me, like this idea of spirit. The original word for spirit is this word called ruach, that it says when God created, that God's spirit was hovering over the world. The ruach was hovering, and that's just the word for wind or breath. Every ancient religion and culture has that deep within it because it's just the reminder that you don't need to go far, you don't need scriptures, you don't need theology. Literally, just it's always around you. It's always within you. It animates the whole thing. As I'm just breathing heavily on a mountain, hearing the wind rush by my ears and watching my children be my children, it was just peace in that moment. There was just God. There was just love, and the world was okay. And isn't that what we long for? It's not always there, but isn't that what we long for? And when I look at the life of Jesus, the thing that I see about the life of Jesus is that Jesus is always inviting us to be with him, that Jesus is inviting us to be like him, Jesus inviting us to do as he did. I think that Jesus invites us into these places of peace. I think Jesus invites us into healing, but that's not where you always start. You don't just become a healer one day. So where we're going today is we want to talk about this bigger idea of becoming a healer, because when we're healed, when we have clarity, when we have sobriety, when reality makes sense, we have more of those moments. We have more of those moments where we can see, where we can hear, where we can know in the deepest part of our beings and our bones and our DNA that it's okay, that God is here, that the whole thing is holy and good. But sometimes we're not always there as healers. Sometimes we got to go on a journey of healing. And that takes time, and that's okay. But we know where we want to get to. We all want those magical moments on a mountaintop. But there's some work to do to get there. So to talk about becoming a healer and finding that peace, we're going to talk about some things. We talked about bend, and now we're going to talk about some acute pain. And if we can talk about acute pain, remember those Scholastic books you got, Choose Your Own Adventure? Talk about a good time, my friends. Now, like, if I'm in full circle, like we're buying those books again. I'm like, God, these are a ripoff. This is incredible. Choose Your Own Adventure, and if we can talk about that, then we can talk about crowds and followers. And if we can talk about crowds and followers, then Reels, my friends. And some Reels fans. And if we can talk about Reels, then we can talk about practice presence. And if we can practice presence, then we can talk about integration. And if we can understand integration, then we'll just talk about step 2 in the 12 steps. Follow along with me as I read through Mark chapter 1. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew, they being Jesus and his other followers, that before this, Jesus had called followers to come and follow me. Before this, Jesus had his baptism in which God speaks over him and says, "This is my son whom I love, with whom I am well pleased that the good news of Jesus is being set up in the world, that God is saying that Jesus is good news, that the good news that you're looking for about what it means to be human, about what reality could look like is found in this Jesus, that if it's true of Jesus, then it's true of you, that you are God's child, that God is pleased with you, and that you are God's beloved. That is the core of the message. No one takes that away from you. That's just the standard of what good news looks like. And right before this, Jesus had been in a synagogue and he had healed a man who was demon possessed, and now they're kind of getting away and they're going to Simon and Andrew's house. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up, and the fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening, after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed, and the whole town gathered at the door. Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak because they knew who he was. As you go through the Gospel of Mark, which we're going to do for as long as it takes to get through the Gospel of Mark, we're 34 verses in, 5 weeks into the year. You do the math, 2028, this thing's going to be over with. As we're here, you're going to constantly see that the ministry of Jesus was about healing at its most basic level. Jesus understands that if you want to get to a place where you can see the world in peace and contentment and that you're fully living, you need to be healed before you get there. It's very difficult to experience peace and to have that kind of presence when you're dealing with your own acute pain, when you're dealing with suffering, when people are damaging you. If there are systemic issues that feel bigger than you are, it is very difficult to experience the peace of God. Jesus is not oblivious to this. And so Jesus goes around healing so that you may get there. Again, the words of Jesus are always this. Why did Jesus come? I have come that you may have life, and life to the fullest. I've come that you can have your best life. It's so simple. Jesus is so interested in your life working out for you in the best way. Jesus wants you to be whole. Jesus wants you to be healed. Jesus wants you to be able to be present with your kids on a mountaintop and not worried about your mortgage payment and if things are going to work out. And I can't believe my mom said that to me again, or whatever the thing may be. We're filled with the pain. And Jesus is saying, but I want you to have healing. And Jesus' ministry is that of healing. If you've ever been injured, whether that's a physical injury, or it's emotional injury, or mental injury, or spiritual injury, you know that anguish. Have you been in anguish? Raise your hand. Probably all of you, because you're a human being. And when you're in that moment of anguish, or that season, or those months, or those years, you're just begging for that pain to go away. You would give anything just to not feel this way anymore. I can't believe that I'm here. God, if you would just take this from me. But the answer is not that you just get that thing taken from you. I've had physical injuries. I've had emotional injuries. I've had mental injuries. And the goal is not just to get from that pain to not having them anymore. That would be just so insufficient. It's that I don't have these anymore so that I can get over here and have these mountaintop moments, so that I can get over here and see life for all that life has to offer. That's the real magic. But there's some work that we got to go through in this healing ministry of Jesus to get there. But that's where we want to go. That's where Jesus wants to take us. And so wherever you find yourself today, would you trust that if you're in that place of anguish, if you're in that place of figuring it out, if you're in that place of, God, would you just alleviate this for me? That it's not just that God wants to alleviate that. And I don't know when, and I don't know how, and I don't know if, and I don't know all of that. That is not where I'm a prosperity gospel preacher. I don't believe that if you write me a $10,000 check right now, although you're welcome to, that all of your problems are going to go away. I don't think there's an equation to this thing. And I think we made it an equation sometimes. We sold Jesus in a way that it was just going to be magic and pixie dust and it was all going to be okay. I don't know how it's going to all be okay. I just trust that there's hope and there's more and there's healing, that there's hope along the way. And I trust that because I've seen it happen in my own life. And anecdotally, I trust that because I've seen it happen. Honestly, I could literally go through the room right now and know that you got through that. You never thought you'd get through that. You did. You made it. You're on the other side of things. And I think what Jesus invites us into is that we have more healing so that we don't go back into our acute pain. We say this all the time at New Abbey, but hurt people hurt people. That's just how we work as human beings. It's probably a better definition of sin than some magical version of like, you didn't do the Santa Claus list that God wanted for you and you ate lobster and thought of naked people. I don't know, that's not helpful for you. It's more of you're just wounded. Those are the stories of sin. You're just hurt. And when you don't have the capacity to cope with your hurt, you hurt other people. Enneagram is a very helpful tool in this. It's so three-dimensional. This is you at your healthiest. When you're at your healthiest and when you're thriving, it slows down and you see the snow coming and your children on the mountain. And when you're not at your healthiest, how dare my child go past me on the mountain? They're not minding me again. I can't believe it. This is all of their mother's fault. It's the same moment. It's the same moment. But it's about where you're at in that moment, because wherever you go, you're there. And it's all about how you are seeing reality in that moment. Are you seeing it from a place of hurt people? Did this thing fall off? Oh my God, just give me a second here. We have an advanced tech system. Give me a moment. That's good. I'll start yelling again. We're back. It's not just a place of hurting now, it's also a place of healing that you can see the world in a different way. And so Jesus is always inviting us into this path of healing so that we can see reality in a different way. That's what's going on in this story, is that Jesus is continuing to heal wherever he goes, because what Jesus eventually wants for us is to have life whole and to have life at the fullest. There's something that always happens in the Gospel of Mark, and I really didn't even see this until like a month ago. I've read the Bible a lot as a pastor, so to speak, right? You spend all this time in Scripture. It's something that I still am passionate about and I love. And it's the first time I noticed something. And the thing that I noticed is this juxtaposition that takes place with the Gospel of Mark all the time. And it's this juxtaposition that makes more sense to me now in this season of my life than it ever did before. There's always a crowd, and there's always followers. And to the crowd, Jesus always says the same thing. I'm going to heal you. I'm going to tell you about good news. I grew up in a world of church that if you weren't a committed follower of Jesus, Jesus wasn't healing you. Jesus was sending you to hell, my friends, right? There was an exclusion that happened here. Oh, you're not going to follow this way of Jesus? You're out. We're the bouncers, and you can't come into the club. But that's not what happens in the Gospel of Mark. There's always equality of healing. Whether or not the crowd ever decides to follow Jesus, Jesus heals everybody. That's the equality. He wants to heal you. That's what Jesus does. Here's the difference. The followers, though, Jesus invites you into something else. The followers, Jesus says, you're going to experience healing in a different way if you follow me. You're going to start to take on responsibility for this healing in a different way if you follow me. I'll come and heal you over there, but statistically speaking, the pain might come again. The hurt might come again. The wholeness might not be there. So I want to invite you into this practice. That's what I want to invite you into. I'll keep showing up for your life, even when you don't show up, even if you never say anything about me. The work of God is God always showing up in God-forsaken places for those who want nothing to do with God. That's who God is. There is not a God out there. You do not see a Jesus that I grew up with who's like, oh, you're not following me, you're going to hell, and you're going to hell. Oh, you're especially going to hell, right? You don't see any of that. You just see Jesus showing up. Jesus is English or whatever that accent is. I'm not sure. That's how they knew he was the Messiah. He was the only English guy in Palestine 2,000 years ago, I guess. I don't know. That has nothing to do with my sermon, but it just came to my head. So that's great. I don't even know what I was talking about after that. That was really, I just kind of lost myself in the Jesus telling people that they're not going to hell. And that's right. Jesus doesn't tell people that they're going to hell. Jesus is just constantly healing people. But the invitation is much more interesting. But also the invitation, and this is the great thing as we follow Jesus, he'll say things like, I want you to follow me. I want you to experience this life and a healing in a different way. But man, if you follow me, you're going to have to take up your cross. Man, if you follow me, it's going to cost you something. You see all of these verses, right, about like narrow is the path and wide is the gate, or I am the way, the truth, and the life. Those are not verses about hell and exclusion. Those are simply verses of, it's harder on this path of healing. And I just want you to know that up front. That's all that Jesus is saying. It is so much harder to choose wholeness It will always be easier when you are hurt just to keep hurting people. It will always be easier. I'm going to keep healing you, but I just want you to know it'll be easier. But if you don't want to keep living into those patterns, if you don't want to keep living into that life, then man, I got a path for you. It's going to be a little bit more narrow. It might be a little bit more difficult. It's certainly going to require something of you. But man, over here, there's living. There's a part later on in Mark where Jesus will say, like, if you want to go, go. And Peter says, where would we go, Lord? You alone have the words of life. Where would I go? I've tasted of hurt people over here. I've tried it out. I've given it my best, and I'm back to my own acute pain. But you have the words of life, and I want to follow you. And so Jesus invites us to follow. Jesus says, if you want healing, I'm here for you in a different way. I'm not going to hold it from you over there, and that's not a story of hell and exclusion. So like God's still going to be there for you, but man, this can be a different path. So now when we're on this path of following, Jesus gives us a choose your own adventure in a different way. Jesus says, man, I'm going to show you some things. The life of following Jesus is rooted in practice. I grew up in a world of church where we didn't really orient things in practice. We oriented everything in conceptual beliefs. If you can memorize some verses, say some specific theology, do stuff like that, then you're going to be okay with God, which is a weird version of God. And it has nothing to do with Jesus, what he ever talked about. Jesus just always invited you to follow, and initially when you follow, it's simply this. And I've missed this so often in my life, having been somebody who loves the intellectual side of theology, who loves the intellectual side of spirituality. What I have so often missed in the Gospels is this. When Jesus says, come and follow me, all he's saying is, please just come and be with me. Just be with me. If you can just be with me, you're going to just see a different way of living. Show me what you practice, and I'll show you the kind of human being that you're going to become. That's just the truth. Pick any area of your life. Show me what you practice, and I will show you the kind of human being that you will become. Show me how you eat. Show me how you work out. Show me how you see money. Show me your sexual ethics. Show me what you practice, and I will show you the kind of human being that you will become. It's not that crazy. We forget that sometimes. We know that in all kinds of areas of our life. I always make the joke, I would love a six-pack. I do not practice having a six-pack. My love for tacos and margaritas is not contributing to the six-pack that I do not have. It is contributing to the six-pack I do not have. I am not practicing what I need to do. I am not interested in doing more sit-ups and eating broccoli and air. I'm just not going to do it. I know my practices will show you the kind of human being that I'm becoming. I remember being early in marriage, and it dawned on me one day, I think I like the idea of being married. I don't know if I'm really practicing being married. And those are two different things. And it was so painful. I love the idea of this thing, but doing it, ooh. It was a wake-up call to change how I was practicing being married, how I was practicing faithfulness, how I was practicing showing up, how I was practicing healing my own stuff so that my wife didn't have to carry my water for me. That what we practice, show me what you practice, and I will show you the person that you will become. I look at the practices of life in a bunch of other ways. Something I practice that I've realized gets in my way sometimes is I practice just scrolling endlessly on social media. I know none of you don't do that. I'm just going to tell you my practices sometimes. I know I'm the only person guilty here of this, but when I practice scrolling endlessly on social media, let me tell you the person I become. Angry, anxious, distracted, discontent. That's the person I become. I'm not saying that happens to you. I'm just saying that happens to me. When I am a recovering sex addict, really popular thing to say in a church, by the way, huge church growth potential when you say that out loud, right? Really big deal. People trust you a lot. It's fantastic. It's never worked against me in any way, shape, or form. If I'm practicing steps towards sobriety and abstinence, it heals my life in a different way. When I don't practice those steps, I know what coping looks like for me. I will practice coping. I will practice being disengaged. I will practice being distant. I'm an Enneagram 3. If I'm not living into health, practicing health as an Enneagram 3, I will practice being just completely disconnected from the world. I will practice being controlling of other people. I can tell you all the things. I don't want to practice that. Jesus is inviting me to follow in a different way. And when we follow in a different way, when we practice following Jesus in a different way, I think we're offered a different life. I want to look at just a couple things real quickly that we can practice. One is I want to practice presence. The thing that Jesus invites us into at the most basic level is just being present with Jesus. Many of you, I've been a good liberal a long time now. I don't use that language a lot anymore. And yet I use the language all of the time. I go to like Hot 8 Yoga and I practice mindfulness. I practice checking in with myself. I practice all these other things that I read in Brené Brown books. And you know all that it is? Quiet time. It's the same thing, but it's where's my attention at? And all those things are getting to the same place. And actually, do something with me. Would you close your eyes? It's okay. It's going to be safe, I promise. I'm not going to do anything weird. You're not going to have to raise your hand. Maybe put like your hand on your chest and your hand on your belly. I bet when your eyes are closed, if I just say, like, would you check in with yourself? Maybe even if it's just for a moment, you sense yourself there, whatever that is. And I think all that Jesus is saying is, what if I'm here too? What if we practice this presence more? And what if it just wasn't mindfulness and checking in with yourself? What if the creator of all of the cosmos, the one who breathes everything into existence, the one who longs to heal you, what if they're there as well? I don't think we have to make it that complicated. I think it's there, and I bet you can imagine that and feel that and experience that and be with that. And would you practice presence in your life? If you need to go on a hiking group where you just look out at just valleys and mountains and whatever, would you practice presence? If you need to go to a Hot 8 yoga class, last year was a hard year for me, and I would go to Hot 8 yoga, and at the end of that class, we would go into fetal position, and I would just cry because I needed it. I just needed to be present. And it's there in a hot, dark room with people that I don't know, and like little whimpers, not big ones. I just needed to cry. And I started to know more and more, it doesn't just have to be checking in with myself. It's also the presence of God that is always accessible to us. No pastor gives that to you or takes that away from you. No theology will reject that from you. There's nothing that anybody has authority over your life where it's not yours. It is always with you. That is what Jesus is reminding you of. It is always with you. And when you practice that presence, when you start to just find connection with that, then I believe that thing, whatever that thing is, God's presence, we call that thing Holy Spirit, right? Begins to shape not only that it's with us, but also who we become. And how do I know that? Think about the really good people in your life. You can also think about the bad. But when you're around them enough, you start to become like them. My wife has taught me the gift of delight just by being around her. If you know her, when you walk into a room, she is delighted to see you. Delighted. Like the most pure delight to know that you're there. My kids will mock her sometimes. She'll pick them up from school and she's like, ah! Like she's never seen them. Like they were war veterans that came home, right? And they'll laugh about it. And I'm like, I'm so sorry that you have a mother that loves you. Yeah, I've got $10,000 worth of therapy working that out, so must be tough. But delight didn't come naturally to me. But her presence showed me that. My best friend, Ben, he just teaches me generosity. Just being in his presence. He's just generous with what he has. Ben is wealthy now. Ben was not wealthy before. He was generous then. It's who he is. He has cultivated that presence within himself. One of my best friends, Daniel, there's just something about Daniel and children. He's just fun. And kids just know it. And they can feel it, and they laugh, and they giggle around him. If you just want to just have excitement, just watch Daniel around kids. It's just being in his presence. I had a mentor named Rob Bell one time. Whenever I would have lunch with Rob, he just taught me the presence of curiosity. I was just so curious about the world. And so you already know that you're practicing presence in your life by the people that you have around you. Those people are teaching you something. Some of those people are teaching you to be angry and cynical and mad and whatever. You don't have to hang out with them all of the time. Surround yourself with people that show you another version of who God is. Allow them to remind you of the divine and the Holy Spirit that is within you. This is your one chance at life. Give it everything that you got. Choose wisely those who are around you. Practice presence in everything that you do. Whether you're checking in with yourself on a hike, whether it's just on a car ride home, whether you're going to be skiing on a mountain with your kids, whether it's hot 8 yoga, whether it's just, I don't care what it is, just check in and trust that God's presence is with you. Surround yourself with other people that when you get a hug from them, when you see them, a call from them, a text from them, it just shows you love and joy and goodness and beauty and life. And if you're not feeling that, you don't have to stay there. Practice presence. I think we can also practice integration. One of the things I love about the story of healing that Jesus shows us is after doing some healing in a synagogue, he goes into this house, and in Jesus' private life, when no one's looking and no one's around and there's no crowds, there's healing that needs to be done, and Jesus does it. I have lived so often in my life disintegrated, where I can be fantastic on stage and charismatic and great in a room, but in my home, I'm not the best version of myself. And I just think that's a common human being thing. Sometimes we're that way. You see it in little kids, by the way. They can be the best kids at school, but at home, they're just terrors. Partly it's because they feel safe. They feel safe enough to lash out. Sometimes the people that we feel safe enough with, we don't treat them that well. And I think this is just a story of, in your most private moments of life, can you also be integrated? When no one's looking, when no one's watching, there can you practice presence. There do you not rush off to whatever you need to cope. There do you not rush off to whatever social media has for you. There can you just sit with yourself and just try holding it for like 5 seconds. I'm not asking you to become like Buddha overnight, people, right? But you're just practicing it. I want to wake up right now and I so badly want to go to Instagram. Why? Why? Can I just hold it off for 10 seconds today? Can I just hold it off for 20 minutes today? Can I just get up and go for a walk? Can I just get up and get in the shower with just me, where I can remind myself I am not alone. The presence of the divine is within me, and I can check in with that thing anytime I want. That's a gift. And it teaches us to be integrated in every aspect of our life. And so Jesus comes in and heals in private. And after that private healing of Peter's mother-in-law, then it says, and then the crowds came. Jesus just kept modeling for the disciples. I just heal, and I heal, and I heal, and I heal. And next week we're going to get to Jesus going and praying and all these other things. You got to recoup as well. It's hard to give what you don't have. But Jesus is just teaching us integration of you can become a healer as well. That if you're going to follow me, if you're not just going to be the crowds anymore, then you're going to first be with me. And if you can be with me and learn this way of being that is beautiful and holds space and can handle the complexities of the world, then would you begin to be like me? That if you see gentleness in me, that gentleness is going to flow out of you. Then you can begin to do as I do, which is where the story always ends with Jesus, right? Now you go and make disciples. Now that you have learned this journey of healing, go bring it to others in need. That's the story. And so we learn to practice presence with Jesus. We learn to practice integration. And then the final thing I think about, and really, Jaime, you brought it up last week, was the second step. And I was on a call this week with a sponsor and some other people in the program. They were talking about the second step, probably because it's February, like each second month. That's how it works. Anyways, 12 steps. You get it 12 months of the year. You can figure it all out on your own. But someone said second step to me in a way that I never thought of before. And the second step is this. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The came to believe part. Came is I woke up. Maybe I woke up because I hit rock bottom, because I was suffering, because I had nothing left. Maybe I woke up because my kids hugged me today and I'm like, this is living. Maybe I woke up because it was the right song. I don't know why you woke up, but you woke up. Came to, I showed up. Eventually you have to practice. You can wake up a lot of times Many of you have been there. You've had these moments of enlightenment and waking up and a big deal, and it seems ready, but now you have to come to this thing, right? Came to. Now I have to show up, right? Came to believe is this idea that I woke up, I showed up to this faith, that there's something that I have to let go of. Faith is surrender. Faith is not certitude, right? I woke up, I showed up to this faith that came to believe that a power greater than myself could lead me to sanity. Greater than myself is this reality that I need God. That is faith. And sanity is just simply acceptance that it can be okay. How many of us need that in our practice? We just simply need to wake up and show up to the reality that life can be okay. What a great place to be. It can be okay. Sometimes things work out for us and they call us 3 weeks early and say, the house is ready for you. I don't know where she's at, but her presence is here. In Jesus' name, amen. Sometimes we wake up and our music gets released on Spotify, and it's like, oh man, I've been working hard towards something creative, and now I got to give it to the world. There's all kinds of beautiful moments that we can experience and wake up to, and I think Jesus is just constantly saying to us, what if I don't want it just to be okay for you? What if I just don't want to heal this acute pain so that you don't have to feel the pain anymore? What if what I want for you is for you to live life and life to the fullest? What if that's my dream for you? So the decision's yours. This is not the decision is yours. Would you raise that hand and God sees that hand? This is the decision's yours of you can always be a part of the crowd. Always. And I will heal you. Or you can come follow me. I know you're a liberal in 2024 now. I know you're asking a lot of questions. I know you're much smarter than all those people in Kansas. We know. I know you're not the bigot from Alabama or whatever the thing is, all the stories we tell ourselves. But man, would you come and follow me? I don't want to just heal you from that. I want you to live. Choice is yours. May we do it together. May we offer one another the presence that we find, that goodness and that light and that love. Would you find the same 3 or 4 people around you and answer this question? How can you practice becoming a healer? Enjoy.